Hello leaders, Patrick Jinks here, leadership and strategy coach and president of the Jinks Perspective. I met someone a few weeks ago that I wish I had met 20 years ago. You're going to meet him next. Let's cue it up. We're wrapping up our April video series on leading through crisis with another special guest and co-author of the blog post we've been talking about this month. Dr. Tom Klaus is founder of a consulting firm he opened in 2013 called Tenacious Change. It's in Laurel, Maryland. I love the name, and I don't have time in this episode to cover his extensive bio, so I've placed a link to it in the video description below, and I hope you'll check it out. I can tell you that Tom's unique talent is in merging theory with practice. I learned there's actually a term for it called pracademics. I recently connected with Tom via Zoom video to talk a little bit about a leader's responsibility to care for others and themselves. Here's my conversation with Dr. Tom Klaus.
Tom, I'm really excited about having you on. Thank you so much for carving out time for us. For our viewers, by the way, that might not know this, I think a lot of the viewers in South Carolina, where I am, and Forrest and Charles, they're familiar with the three of us and Casey working with Forrest. Some of my viewers may not be familiar with you, and I just want to say how glad I am to have had the opportunity to meet you through this process of collaborating with Forrest and Charles. You're up in Maryland, where I've been spending actually a significant amount of time lately. But you just, in talking with you and hearing you and what you're doing with your clients and your perspective on things, I'm just so thrilled that this is one good thing that's come out of this, is an opportunity to get to connect with someone like you. So thanks for joining us and being a part of all this.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure, Patrick, and I have really enjoyed getting to know you and Charles, and those meetings that we've been having to think together and brainstorm together, and just kind of, maybe even a little bit of venting here and there about about the circumstances that we're all facing right now. So I'm really honored to do this, and have been really looking forward to it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, good. Well, when we put the blog post together, we talked about 5 things that all of us were sort of experiencing as common among the various nonprofit leaders that we all are working with. And one of those areas, I was really intrigued about some of your perspective on this one, and that was the idea of a leader caring. And we talked about how a leader, of course, you have to care for your organization. You have to care for your board. You really have to care for your staff team right now. They're in distress. They're kind of out of their routine. They're uncertain about their jobs in many cases. But then there's this one entity that we tend to push aside and not care for, and that's that's ourselves. And when it comes to particularly a crisis like this that we've been dealing with, I know you probably find this with your clients. I'm working with a ton of people who consider themselves and are good practitioners of what they call servant leadership.
Yeah.
And they put everybody else first. And they're making sure right now that they're caring for clients at the food bank and the free clinics and their staff and everything else. And really, they're thinking, I don't have time right now to care for myself. This is all about everybody else. What are you saying to your clients right now? And what would you say to our viewers about that perspective, which is a noble one? But, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're right. It is a very noble one. We have all gone into nonprofit work at some time or another in our lives. And all of us, Charles, Forrest, Casey, yourself, myself, have all been there. And we do that because we really do care about contributing to the greater good of the world. And so many times we do adopt this servant leadership posture. And that means that we end up really doing everything we can to take care of those that are benefiting from our services as well as our staff. But I think that the thing that I try to emphasize with my clients is it's really important for you to take care of yourself right now, even though it doesn't feel like intuitively it's the right thing to do, it's important to do it, because if you really want to do a good job of taking care of others, you really need to prioritize taking care of yourself. So in fact, I think, Patrick, I heard you say this in a call that we had the other day. There's this kind of a cute adage that we throw out every now and then, that we remind people that, if you're in an airplane and that face mask drops down, remember the instruction, put it on for yourself first and then take care of the people around you. And this is exactly that moment where that advice applies, is that in this moment, the pressure's gone out. We've lost cabin pressure. And now we have to decide, do we immediately focus on taking care of the people with us, or do we take care of ourselves in this moment? Well, the practical advice is we take care of ourselves first so that we can take care of the people around us. And so there's really kind of three things that I try to say to people in building the argument for taking care of yourself. The first one is that by prioritizing and practicing some of that self-care first, what it does is it forces us to slow down and to become more proactive than reactive. There's a part of us that really wants, in the moment of crisis, to just simply begin to do something to react to it. But if we will take the moment to slow down, what it will do is it will ask us, it will push us, in fact, to slow down and really take that more proactive posture. Now, the second thing is related to that when we are in that proactive posture, what it allows us to do is to embrace this understanding that sometimes, in order to go really fast, we first have to go really slow. There's this crazy commercial I've seen. I think it's for Babbel, the language. And they really capture this very, very nicely. They show a person who's trying to speak, I think it is Spanish, and they are just slaughtering the Spanish pronunciation, right? And then they say, to speak a language very well, you first have to speak it very badly. And in a moment of crisis, we want to go fast because everything in us says we have to solve it really, really fast. But if in fact we really want to go fast, sometimes we have to go slow. We have to be able to step back, and we need to be able to ask ourselves, yes, I really want to fix this situation. I really want to make it right. But if we go rushing into that, what happens is that we may lose time, in fact, because we apply the wrong solution, or we apply it in a halfway. And so we lose time because we have to now double back and we have to fix the fix that we first applied. Does that make sense?
It does. And we've mentioned this several times on our calls, Tom, and I think I've mentioned it in both of the previous interviews the last 2 weeks. And that again is advice that we should adhere to even when it's not a crisis.
Absolutely.
Slow down, think about what you're doing. It's like planning. Planning is a part of your job as a leader, and yet I don't have time to plan right now because I got action in front of me right now. So again, it's another case where that concept isn't any different than it always is, but it's probably more important now than ever.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And that actually leads into the third thing, which is really the reason that we step back, we slow down, we don't rush in to fix something. And that is, it's really about the most important job of leadership. And the most important job of leadership at any time, in a time of crisis or otherwise, is sense making. Meaning making, that it is our role as leaders to take in all of the information that is out there and everything that is happening about with our organization and the clients that we're trying to serve, and to try to make sense of that environment and that context, and to figure out what our next steps need to be. Now, in a crisis, especially, we may not be doing that all by ourselves. We may be leading that as part of our leadership team or whatever. But if we rush, we lose the opportunity to really make sense of what's going on, and therefore we lose the opportunity to really become strategic in how we respond. So sense making is really about finding a way to describe and to articulate what is going on. And then once we have that in hand, what we can do is we can move into the prescription stage, which is, because we understand this about it and this is how we see it, now here's how we think we can address it. And those are really important tasks of leadership. And if we just go rushing right into the fire without stopping and thinking strategically about what it is that needs to happen, we sometimes, it can cause more of a mess, and we sometimes lose even more time because now we have to double back and fix it.
That's just so true. The sense making, as you're talking through that, I might equate that a little bit to what I always think about, which is it's vision casting, but in a very different way. We think vision casting as the big vision and the big picture and the innovative dream for the organization. But vision casting, if the word vision is sight. And so vision casting is really help people be able to see the picture, the one that's right here in front of us now, the one that's behind us, the one that's on the horizon, the one that's in the future. And that sense making you're talking about, for me, is that here's what the picture this is what we are really sort of seeing and should be seeing right now. And then we start to spread that out down the line a little bit and start to cast vision, that proactive prescription phase that you're talking about. So does that make sense that I would equate that to a vision casting role?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. When I think of vision casting, I think I tend to think, and you said this idea of maybe a little bit more broadly, but at the same time, the elements are very much the same. That you don't rush into that, even in a moment of crisis. You need to find the space and the way to step back and to be really thoughtful about that, so that you don't have to keep coming back and fixing something you rushed into, or a mistake that you made, or something you missed along the way.
Yeah, that's what we don't realize, is that taking that time on the front end actually reduces the amount of time. We think we're slowing down, but as you said, it's slowing down to speed up. I want to get on to a couple of other questions, but it does dawn on me that yes, we talk about the oxygen mask in the plane. We also know a lot of leaders who would ignore that instruction on the plane.
Yes,
they would go straight to putting it on their child or their spouse or because of the bravado, right? It's like, no, this doesn't apply to me. And I think in this same kind of crisis situation, people hear it and practically, cognitively, they go, yeah, Tom's right, but I'm different. I'm stronger. I can handle this. And it eventually catches up to us, does it not?
It does. And, I'm just having this mental image in my mind of those times when I've been in organizations in times of crisis. And you can visually see when you have a leader who puts the face mask on everybody else versus on them. That's the one that comes in looking so haggard, so worn out, like they've not slept a wink in 3 months. And what they don't understand is they walk in the room, that doesn't inspire confidence.
That's right. They're really projecting a different message than what they think. So you're talking about prioritizing self-care. Any suggestions on how you do that? I mean, it's great to say.
Oh, man.
How do you prioritize self-care right now, practically?
Well, I think it's important to realize that self-care is a very high level. Some might want to call it a high wire balancing act, right? I mean, there's so many different things that all of us have going on in our lives, but I like to think of it in terms of a series of relationships. In fact, one of the things I often say to clients is that it's all about relationships. It's always about relationships. And that process of building and maintaining good relationships is the most important work we do. But in that definition, the temptation is to take relationships in a very narrow sense, but I mean it in a very expansive sense. So what I mean by that is that there's at least 4 different areas of relationships. There's the relationship with ourselves, there's a relationship with family, there's the relationship with friends, and there's a relationship with work. So And each of those has multiple dimensions. So, for example, in terms of the family, in terms of yourself, a healthy relationship with ourself means that we pay attention to our physical, our mental, emotional, and our spiritual health. With our families, it means we give time and we give quality attention to sustaining healthy relationships with our spouses, our partners, our kids, our in-laws, our outlaws, everybody, that is meaningful in our family life. For our friendships, it means we invest appropriate time and energy in the relationships we have with our friends, but at the same time, we're thoughtful about that, especially in a crisis. We want to prioritize those that we feel closest to and with whom we have the deepest mutual trust. So, for example, every Saturday morning at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Central, we sit down and have coffee with two of our best friends in Western Kansas. And we do it by Zoom. But it's a way for us to maintain a connection with people that are really important in our lives, that we feel very close to. And then in our work relationship, it means that we give the attention that we need to give to our work so that we can do it with excellence, yet we don't let it dominate the other three areas of our life. Now, the reality, Patrick, as you and I both know, is that sometimes our work does have to dominate the other areas of our life. And when that does happen, we want to do everything we can to make sure that it's for as little time as possible so that we can get right back to those other relationships. So I think the way we effectively rebalance and reprioritize the relationships is that we do that by being intentional about investing in the other three areas, because in a moment of crisis or at work, that throws everything out of balance. So we have to be intentional about rebalancing with self, family, and friends. Even under a time crunch, we need to take time to spend the time with family and friends. We need to even take time to participate in our faith community or to see our therapist or do whatever we need to do to maintain our health and well-being.
Yeah.
So I think those are the important pieces, I believe.
That's great. And I was going to sum it up exactly the same way. The word that kept coming to my mind as you were walking through that framework was intentional. We just have to be intentional, which means very practically, you have to write it down on your to-do list or your calendar, or so, just like I got a Zoom call with my staff, or I've got to reach out to my board, or I've got to apply for this loan.
Right.
You got to get intentional about, I've got to carve out some time in my day to sort of break away and decompress and recharge. And so I love that. Now we've been talking on the phone with Charles and Forrest and Casey about how busy we are right now.
Right.
Which some people might think, oh, I bet they're not very busy right now. You and I were just talking before we started this interview. We're both, I think, busier than ever right now, just for various reasons. And it's a slightly different flavor of work for me, but we're busy. I think you and I are both putting in, 12, 14-hour days and going. There kind of are no weekends. To me, all the days are just kind of running together. So let me I'll play coach here for a second, Tom, and say, how are you doing this? Where are you carving out time, and what are some of those things you're doing to make sure that you're caring for yourself as well? I think we all have to ask ourselves the same question.
Well, so Patrick, you used a word there I'm not familiar with, weekend. What is a weekend?
Right.
I think that's when I used to play golf. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about how this COVID-19 time period feels like dog years.
Oh.
1 year is 7 years. It feels sometimes like 1 week is 7 weeks in this time period. But
yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, so there's several things that I do, and you hit it right on the head. I mean, we're busy. I know, talking with you, Charles, Casey, we are all really, really busy. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's much money making going on there, but we are really busy, right? Just trying to do what we need to do to sustain our businesses and to take care of the clients that we have. So there's some things that I prioritize to really do that for myself. One is that I take daily walks. And I have two old miniature schnauzers, which help me with that because they have a functional walker 2 or 3 or 4 that they need to take every day. And so I'm half of the dog walking team, so I do that at least half the time, right? But then I also like to take just real walks, what I call real walks, exercise walks, just alone or with my spouse. Also, what's been really kind of cool about working so much at home recently. Now, my office is in my home, but at the same time, you know, when you've got other stuff going on outside, you don't necessarily take time to do the things that you need to. So what my wife and I are finding is that we're spending more time actually sitting down and having a meal together and having conversations over dinner. And that's been really, really nice. I've been reading more for fun. I just finished a book of short stories that have been given to me by a friend several months ago. I'm doing more reading for thinking. I'm trying to find space to do that. I'm trying to do more learning, which is for me, that's a matter of catching up on the great courses that I have purchased and haven't gotten around to yet, or the Udemy courses that I haven't gotten around to yet. Participating in my faith community through Zoom has been something that we've prioritized as well. And then this really weird thing that I do every day is I write a daily drivel blog. And I describe this thing as like, there's a recipe to it. It's like 1/4 cup humor, 1/4 cup personal, 1/4 cup truth, and 1/4 cup rant. And that means 1 full cup of drivel, that I'm putting out there in a daily blog. I've been doing it now. Tomorrow will be 32 days, 33 days, something like that, every day straight, which has been a fascinating discipline. I got to tell you, I have really wondered, what in the world can I write about daily, every single day? And so it's been great because you see, in this alternative universe, in an alternative parallel universe, there is me as a stand-up comic. And so this is an opportunity for me to kind of test some of that out in a more reasoned and sensible way. So, but the real reason I started the blog was because in times of stress and anxiety, I go to writing, and I find myself able to think more clearly and to think more creatively when I write. And so I felt so overwhelmed by this whole situation that I didn't know how to think about it. So I just started writing very stream of consciousness, and I found that it really reduced my anxiety level. So that's been one of the things that I've been doing, even though sometimes at first it took 3 and 4 hours out of the day, at the end of the day to do that. I've got it down to about an hour and a half now. But that's been really good. And then the other thing that I do, of course, is that I maintain my work with my clients and getting caught up in some of the things that I need to be doing. So those are the things I'm doing at this point in time. The thing I wish I could be doing is playing golf, but I can't play golf. So I write a drivel blog. Patrick, what about you? What are you doing?
Well, golf is coming soon, I'm sure. And before I answer that question, I'm wondering, I don't know if you keep analysis on your blog viewership, but I bet you're getting more views on your drivel blog than you do on your serious stuff.
Yes.
Right now. People are probably hungry for it as well. And I like that you said writing is your go-to. It's not mine. Music is one of my go-tos, and I'll pick up a guitar and just play. That's just kind of a release. For some people, it's gardening. For some people, it's reading, it's walking, it's binge watching Netflix, whatever it might be. But find your go-to and give yourself time for that. So I really like that. Tom, for me, I got to say, I feel like I think I do a pretty good job of the self-care anyway. It's funny. I'm talking to so many people who are trying to get used to working from home right now, and I'm used to it because I do it anyway. I mean, this is my office. And so I've learned a discipline over years of how to just live at home and work at home and find that right balance. But a lot of people are not finding that. They've got, particularly if you've got children in the home, you've got pets in the home, you've got phones ringing and things like that. It's difficult for people to adapt to working from home. But for me, I don't know, this is a weird way of putting it, and maybe you can relate, maybe you can't. People are talking about, I'm having that hard time knowing when I'm at work and when I'm not at work, when I'm at home, when I'm working from home. Like, how do you just flip the switch and say I'm not at work anymore? I do it throughout the day and throughout the week whenever I can. Like, there's not a 8 to 5 or I find a lot of energy in the mornings. So I do a lot of my maybe my most challenging work in the mornings. But I've just learned how to, if I need to let go for 10 or 15 minutes, I just do it. So for me, I don't know. I'm not finding it difficult right now because I'm already used to this and have kind of developed that discipline of finding balance and being totally okay with the balance and saying, yeah, I am at home. I'm going to go downstairs and, eat a sandwich. I get to do that. And I think it's important for leaders to understand you get to do that now. Take advantage of it, learn from it, journal from it. I think a lot of people need to be bullet pointing some things that they're learning out of this so that we don't forget down the line, oh yeah, I learned some kind of neat things and tricks and things. Last question, because I want to be sensitive to your time. Anything else that you think would be helpful, going back to our blog post, on any other item or more on this idea of self-care? Anything else that my questions didn't uncover today?
Well, that's a really good question, Patrick. I think they've covered it very, very well. But I did want to respond to something you said, and that is that I really get what you're saying about this working at home. I haven't done the 8 to 5 for years. I do pretty much the 24/7, but really I pick the hours in that 24, that I'm working, and the result is that I probably actually work more than if I worked 8 to 5. But at the same time, there is a freedom that comes with that. And this is the kind of thing that I think that people have the opportunity to experience right now working from home. It can be stressful if they are kept to a really strict 8 to 5 kind of regimen by their employers. And so one of the things that what nonprofit leaders might want to think about is think about what would it look like if your employees were not kept to a strict 8 to 5, but perhaps what if you had 3 hours out of the day that was kind of that time when people were known to come together on Zoom or by phone or whatever to make sure that they're exchanging the information and the material they need to get their work done during the day.
Yeah.
And then trusting your employees to get it done. I've often wondered what our work world would look like if we were structured more that way, as opposed to imagining that we still have to stay to this kind of strict 8 to 5 kind of time frame when people are trying to work from home. The other thing I would say to the leaders is try a nap every now and then. I have this really great application on my phone, and it's called Calm, and you can download it for free. And it gives you 30-minute naps, and it's a kind of a mindfulness resting kind of thing. My God, I fall asleep with those things, and I sleep for about 15 minutes, and I wake up and I'm a completely new person. I was never a believer in naps until this time.
I just finished a book you may have read, Tom, by Daniel Pink. And a lot of people are familiar with Daniel Pink's book, Drive, which talks about the surprising things that motivate people. His latest one is called Win, W-H-E-N, Win. And it's the surprising truth about timing in our lives. And I won't give any more away than that, but it was an interesting, informative book. And he has a whole segment on naps and the research behind it, not just, hey, this is a great idea, but it's really cool. Tom, this has been fantastic. I know we could go on and on and on. This last few weeks, I've been thinking, man, I need to have guests on the channel on a more regular basis, because the people hear from me all the time and they need some fresh, good, higher elevated content. So thank you again. for collaborating with us on trying to help nonprofits think through this, and for taking time out to Zoom with us here and share your thoughts. And I look forward to more work together. I know we're continuing to stay in touch and see what else we can do as a group. So hopefully you'll be back on the golf course lickety split before long. Looks like we're starting to head in that direction, so we'll see. But thanks again, Tom. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Patrick. It has really been a pleasure, and it's been just an awful lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Indeed. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Tom, as I complete my doctoral program in the same field you earned your PhD, which is organizational leadership, I can say that you have truly inspired me and made me so glad I chose the coursework that I did. That's the Jinks Perspective for this week. Don't forget to check out the Tenacious Change website below. And as always, if you'd like to explore ways that the Jinks Perspective can help you and your organization achieve greater clarity, simplicity, and alignment in your mission work, I hope that you'll reach out and schedule a free discovery call with me by clicking the link that's also in the video description below. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon next to the subscribe button to notify you when we drop new episodes. And please, as always, think of a friend or a colleague you think might benefit from these videos and share them. See you here next week.